Amenhotep IV changed his royal titulary to show his devotion to the Aten. No longer would he be known as Amenhotep IV and be associated with the god Amen, but rather he would completely shift his focus to the Aten. Egyptologists debate the exact meaning of Akhenaten, his new personal name. The word Aboutancient Egyptian Q could have different translations, such as satisfied, effective spirit, or serviceable to, and thus Akhenaten's name could be translated to mean Aten is satisfied, effective spirit of the Aten, or serviceable to the Aten, respectively. Gertie England and Florence Friedman arrive at the translation effective for the Aten by analyzing contemporary texts and inscriptions, in which Akhenaten often described himself as being effective for the sun disk. England and Friedman conclude that the frequency with which Akhenaten used this term likely means that his own name meant effective for the Aten. Some historians, such as William F. Albright, Edel Elmer, and Gerhard Fecht, propose that Akhenaten's name is misspelled and mispronounced. These historians believe Aten should rather be Jedi, thus rendering the pharaoh's name Akhenjudi or Akhenjati, pronounced Akhenjatu, as it could have been pronounced in ancient Egypt. Around the same time, he changed his royal titulary. On the 13th day of the growing season's 4th month, Akhenaten decreed that a new capital city be built, Akhetaten Ancient Egyptian, TJTN, meaning Horizon of the Aten, better known today as Amarna, the events Egyptologists know the most about during Akhenaten's life are connected with founding Akhetaten, as several so-called boundary stelae were found around the city to mark its boundary. The pharaoh chose a site about halfway between Thebes, the capital at the time, and Memphis on the east bank of the Nile, where a wadi and a natural dip in the surrounding cliffs form a silhouette, similar to the horizon hieroglyph. Additionally, the site had previously been uninhabited. According to inscriptions on one boundary stela, the site was appropriate for Aten city, for not being the property of a god, nor being the property of a goddess, nor being the property of a ruler, nor being the property of a female ruler, nor being the property of any people able to lay claim to it. Historians do not know for certain why Akhenaten established a new capital and left Thebes, the old capital. The boundary stele detailing Akhenaten's founding is damaged, where it likely explained the pharaoh's motives for the move. Surviving parts claim what happened to Akhenaten was worse than those that I heard previously in his reign, and worse than those heard by any kings who assumed the white crown, and alludes to offensive speech against the Aten. Egyptologists believe that Akhenaten could be referring to conflict with the priesthood and followers of Amen, the patron god of Thebes. The great temples of Amen, such as Karnak, were all located in Thebes, and the priests there achieved significant power. Earlier in the 18th dynasty, especially under Hatshepsut and Thutmose III, thanks to pharaohs offering large amounts of Egypt's growing wealth to the cult of Amen. Historians, such as Donald B. Redford, therefore posited that by moving to a new capital, Akhenaten may have been trying to break with Amen's priests and the god. Akhetaten was a planned city, with the great temple of the Aten, small Aten temple, royal residences, records office, and government buildings in the city center. Some of these buildings, such as the Aten temples, were ordered to be built by Akhenaten on the boundary stela. Decreeing the city's founding, the city was built quickly, thanks to a new construction method that used substantially smaller building blocks than under previous pharaohs. These blocks, called talatats, measured 1 by 1 ancient Egyptian cubit c. 27 by 27 by 54 centimeters, and because of the smaller weight and standardized size, using them during constructions was more efficient than using heavy building blocks of varying sizes. By regnal year 8, Akhetaten reached a state where it could be occupied by the royal family. Only his most loyal subjects followed Akhenaten and his family to the new city. While the city continued to be built, in years 5 through 8, construction work began to stop in Thebes. The Theban Aten temples that had begun were abandoned, and a village of those working on Valley of the King's Tombs was relocated to the workers' village. At Akhenaten, however, construction work continued in the rest of the country, as larger cult centers, such as Heliopolis and Memphis, also had temples built for Aten, Nefertiti, and Setepener, corrigency with Smenkhare or Nefertiti. Akhenaten could have ruled together with Smenkhare and Nefertiti for several years before his death, based on depictions and artifacts from the tombs of Merir II and Tutankhamun. Smenkhare could have been Akhenaten's corregent by regnal year 13 or 14, but died a year or two later. Nefertiti might not have assumed the role of corregent until after year 16, when a stela still mentions her as Akhenaten's great royal wife, while Nefertiti's familial relationship with Akhenaten is known. Whether Akhenaten and Smenkhare were related by blood is unclear. Smenkhare could have been Akhenaten's son or brother. As the son of Amenhotep III with Tai or Sitamun, archaeological evidence makes it clear, however, that Smenkhare was married to Meritaten, Akhenaten's eldest daughter, for another, the so-called corrigency stela, found in a tomb at Akhenaten, might show Queen Nefertiti as Akhenaten's corregent, but this is uncertain, as the stela was recarved to show the names of Amenhotep and Nefertiti. Egyptologist Adon Dodson proposed that both Smenkhare and Nefertiti were Akhenaten's corregents to ensure the Amarna family's continued rule. When Egypt was confronted with an epidemic, Dodson suggested that the two were chosen to rule as Tutankhaten's corregent in case Akhenaten died, and Tutankhaten took the throne at a young age, or rule in Tutankhaten's stead, if the prince also died in the epidemic. Akhenaten died after 17 years of rule and was initially buried in a tomb in the royal wadi east of Akhenaten. The order to construct the tomb and to bury the pharaoh there was commemorated on one of the boundary stela delineating the capital's borders. Let a tomb be made for me in the eastern mountain. Let my burial be made in it, in the millions of jubilees which the Aten, my father, decreed for me. In the years following the burial, Akhenaten's sarcophagus was destroyed and left in the Akhenaten necropolis. Reconstructed in the 20th century, it is in the Egyptian Museum in Cairo as of 2019. Despite leaving the sarcophagus behind, Akhenaten's mummy was removed from the royal tombs after Tutankhamun abandoned Akhenaten and returned to Thebes. It was most likely moved to tomb KV55. In Valley of the Kings near Thebes, this tomb was later desecrated, likely during the Ramesside period. Whether Smenkhare also enjoyed a brief independent reign after Akhenaten is unclear. If Smenkhare outlived Akhenaten and became sole pharaoh, he likely ruled Egypt for less than a year. The next successor was Nefertiti or Meritaten ruling as Nefertiti, reigning in Egypt for about 2 years. She was, in turn, probably succeeded by Tutankhaten, with the country being administered by the vizier and future pharaoh oversaw all religious activity. Egyptians could access their gods through regular public holidays, festivals, and processions. This led to a seemingly close connection between people and the gods, especially the patron deity of their respective towns and cities. Akhenaten, however, banned the worship of gods beside the Aten, including through festivals. He also declared himself to be the only one who could worship the Aten, and required that all religious devotion previously exhibited toward the gods be directed toward himself. After the Amarna period, during the 19th and 20th dynasties c. 270 years following Akhenaten's death, the relationship between the people, the pharaoh, and the gods did not simply revert to pre-Amarna practices and beliefs. The worship of all gods returned, but the relationship between the gods and the worshippers became more direct and personal, circumventing the pharaoh rather than acting through the pharaoh. Egyptians started to believe that the gods intervened directly in their lives, protecting the pious and punishing criminals. The gods replaced the pharaoh as their own representatives on earth. The god Amen once again became king among all gods. According to Van Dyck, the king was no longer a god, but God himself had become king. Once Amen had been recognized as the true king, Here the second part of information about King Amenhotep IV. Akhenaten has ended. See you in the next part.